Please welcome Kevin Mac McGovern, candidate for Congress in the 15th District. Thank you, sir, for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Greg.
Why are you running in this district? You were running in an Orlando area district just a couple of months ago, and that is where you're from. Why did you switch and decide to run here?
Sure, great question. I was actually in the 7th. I own a home downtown Orlando, and we were in the 7th, and I was going to run against Stephanie Murphy, I thought, until she dropped out. I got redistricted out, so that where I live now is now the 10th. So
why not run to the 10th?
Well, to be quite honest, it's uncompetitive for a Republican.
The issues you identify on your campaign website: one, make sure elections are fair and free of voter fraud.
Correct.
Was the 2020 election fair and free of widespread fraud?
There were a lot of questions on the election.
I know, but how do you answer them? Was there widespread fraud?
I don't believe so.
Your platform also states there should be no place for progressive educators inserting racial politics in K through 12 schools.
Absolutely.
Is that currently occurring? And if so, how? Give us a couple of examples.
Well, you saw what the governor did when they looked at some of the books. So, you know, this year was our
math books?
Our math books. This year.
What did you see in the math books that you found objectionable?
Well, because what they were doing is it looked like everything was race-based. So why would you be teaching a child math and you have to inject race into it? It doesn't seem to make any sense.
Well, it was determining racial makeup of a police department, for example, to determine whether it was in sync with the demographics of the community. It's a word problem in which you apply the formulas in a way that, in fact, a lot of people in the real world do to determine whether or not they're in sync or out of whack. How is that, you think, out of line?
Well, it's out of line because it's unnecessary. It's absolutely unnecessary. We want children to come out. Look where we're at in math. Look where we're at in science, based in the world. And what we do is now we're going to add in other things. We're going to make sure that everything has a racial component. You know, I spent 40 plus years in the United States Navy. I served with every race, color, creed you can imagine. And when I look at this, it seems that we're overly concerned and wanting to put forth an agenda that doesn't need to be there. And I object to that.
You state that you patrol the China Sea.
That's correct.
And that you know a thing or two about China and its threats toward Taiwan.
I do.
If you're elected as a member of Congress, and if China does in fact invade in the same way that Russia invaded another country, Ukraine, would you vote to authorize war to defend Taiwan?
As a last step, I believe as one who's been to war, the last thing you want to do is send our troops into war. But there's things you can do before that. There are economic.
But if the invasion occurs, at that point, would you vote to authorize war to defend Taiwan?
Possibly. We'd have to look at it. When you say war, are you saying all-out war and they're bombing Taipei and destroying it? And
yes, like Russia invaded Ukraine.
I would have to say that we would have the 7th Fleet in there. We would be ready for war. And again, that is something the Commander-in-Chief and then the Congress of the United States would have to vote for. But I would have to look at that situation as it unfolds. To say yes or no as a binary it would be a foolish answer. There are so many, when you've spent 40 years in the U.S. Navy, there's so many components of what would happen at that point. Are they coming in with a small attack? Are they saber rattling and they made a mistake? What happens then? I played chicken in the China Sea more times than I could count. So you have to look at that situation, and that's why we want good people at the top, the generals, the admirals, people who know that and say, we can do this and prevent war, or now we're backed into a corner. We don't want to get backed into a corner.
You're running as a fiscal hawk. You say that wasteful spending is jeopardizing our national security. We'll close again for context.
Sure.
a specific example that really gets your goat of what you consider to be wasteful spending?
Well, look at the bills that we've pushed out recently. First of all, go all the way back to the beginning, a year ago, March. We had a COVID bill. Good thing. The country needed help. There was so much fraud, waste, and abuse in that bill. And having been in D.C. for so many years, I see it. Any big government
but I see the
programs-
conflict in you. You said it was a good bill, but it contained things it shouldn't. It comes to you. Do you vote yes or no if you had a seat in Congress then?
That's a great question. And most Congress people don't look at the lines in there. They don't look at the line items. They say, this is going to be good. Next election, I don't want the people of my district, I don't want my opponent coming after me because I said no to this bill because it was wasteful spending. I was the first in my district to sign term limits, and I believe in term limits. And if it's wasteful, I started as a 17-year-old kid and end up as a Navy captain. I am a loudmouth. I will stand up and say, look, we need to get this. When these things come out of committee, it might be too late. You need to make sure the right things are being put into that bill before. And then if they're not, you need to fight like heck to say, nope, we're sending this back. I'm not going to vote, and I'm going to tell you why I'm not going to vote.
You've done this. You've put up a good fight, and yet it is what it is. The gentleman from Florida, take your seat. Now it's time for a vote, knowing what you know, with the problems you have with it, but the important things that it contained to fight COVID at that time. Would you have voted yes or no?
I would have voted yes on that bill. And because I saw the suffering of the people of the United States. But here's what happens. In D.C., you put a bill out like that, and they ask for more than they need, and then there's no audit, there's no paper trail. We have lost so much money on this. Now, the American people, the people in 15 and every other district in this country are on the hook for that. And that is not right. So what we need is fresh ideas. We need people who are going to fight. When I was in D.C., we used to say that D.C. is where good ideas come to die. We don't want that. We want the good ideas. We want to get rid of the pork.
Kevin Mac McGovern, thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.